to make sure you are aware. So we're going to answer some questions, do a little overview, and then go back to some Q&A. And side note, I'm going to show you how to do this shortly, but I had Gemini embedded in Google Slides make this slide. I just said, here's the agenda, and just dumped it in because I was sharing with Tim and we were emailing back and forth. And so I just dumped in like my chicken scratch and it made the slide, including the image. Is it the most amazing slide you've ever seen? No, but it's a good start, right? It made it for me. It did it in about 1 second. Pretty cool. So a couple of answers for you immediately from your questions that were coming in and emailing. You cannot delete chats. They will be saved for 18 months. And then I just put in reminder you're at work. Is Chris on? Chris, are you here? I was curious.
Yes.
Hi. Is that something that anybody needs to worry about, or they just auto delete? Can you talk about that for just a second?
So what we believe to be the case right now, based on Google's documentation, is that they auto delete after 18 months. Because Gemini hasn't been around for 18 months, we don't really have a good way to check that yet. So we'll be keeping an eye on that pretty closely. In fact, I was looking for ways that if for some reason we needed to delete them from an administrative standpoint, I'm not even sure if such a thing exists in the admin console for Google, which I'm actually looking at right now, to see if something's there. And I don't see anything there either. So definitely something for us to keep an eye on behind the scenes.
Okay. And then, thank you. And then here, for those of you that were already diving in, you were like, hey, I can't get into my Google Drive. You can now. So it's been turned on now, so you don't need to download or upload to attach from Drive. You can just go, or you can go straight to Drive. So you can just attach right there. I will show you that momentarily if you don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, so again, this slide I had Gemini make. This is a whole lot of text. I would probably never normally use the slide, but I just wanted to show you. I said I'm providing some training to staff about the benefits of moving to premium Gemini over the free version. And this is what it gave me. It gave me two things. It gave me a nice list. And then it also put together an entire table for me, which was nice. That gave the benefits for educators and things you could do with that. So I thought it was pretty great. And again, it happened instantaneously, which was nice. So one thing I wanted to talk while I have your attention real quick is that we're going to be using generative AI here to ask Gemini to do some things for us. And I just wanted to remind you, or maybe to show you for the first time if you hadn't seen this, that prompting is key. What you ask for is very important. You know, garbage in, garbage out. If you have a really great prompt, you're going to get much better responses from generative AI. And so C GPT, like Chat GPT, C for context, G for goal, P for persona, and T for task. I think oftentimes we dive in and we immediately put in the task. Write me an email, and or create a lesson plan or give me an engaging activity. And I think it's best if we try to remember the C, the G, and the P part as well. And it will learn from you a little bit too, which is nice. It'll start to remember the context, like you're a teacher and you're in an EL classroom and that sort of thing. Here's a little example for that. I like to use the example of SALT. I could say it's 10th grade students. I'm understanding the role of SALT. The persona is, for me, I would put in science teacher, but you can see how changing up that persona really matters. And these large language models, they don't know the difference, right? They're just going and grabbing what you're asking it to grab. So you need to be specific in telling it what you want. So persona can be highly important, especially like in this case. And then the task that I asked it for was to create an activity for 10th graders. So I just wanted to throw that out there. This isn't a prompting training. We're going to just look at Gemini now. But I wanted to make sure that you were seeing all of those things. Okay, so the first thing I would like you to do, hopefully you are on your MacBook, is if you could open up, I'm working from Chrome, but if you are in your Gmail or in Drive, anything like that, you should be able to find over here, if you're logged in, your little grid. Tim, are you still seeing my screen?
Yeah, we can see everything. You're good.
Okay, great. It all of a sudden looks odd on here. Tim and I were discussing how every time we start Zoom, things seem to be just a little different. Zoom likes to do that. So under the little grid here, go ahead and get Gemini, and you're going to click on that. Or you can just go to gemini.google.com for whatever browser you're in. And then you're going to log in with your District 214 credentials. So do a login with Google. Put in your first dot last at D214, and you should see a screen that looks like this. And those of you that have been using ChatGPT, it looks just like ChatGPT. You can see if I click new chat here, it says Gemini for 214. You should see your 214 up here in the corner. You can see now we're on this fancy Gemini Advanced version. And we've got a little more functionality down here, which is great. So you can prompt in the window down here like you normally would. I want to show you one that I just did to start off with. I used this plus sign down here in the bottom to add not only a drive file, but also something that was in my downloads. So what I'd like for you to do right now is click on this little plus down here in this window and click on Drive, and you can go ahead and log in. It's completely fine if you're connected to your Google Drive because we're within under our educator umbrella. And Chris, can you talk to that a little bit? It's safe to can they attach files in here with student information? I know we shouldn't get into the habit of doing that, but can you
Yeah,
talk
I think you make a
that a
good
little?
point. I mean, yeah, we can because what basically under our Google licensing and data privacy model, Google has opted to not use anything that we submit to Gemini to improve the model, which is to say it's not going to be reviewed by humans, by machines to make the large language model better, if you will. Good, better, and different. Student privacy has to be at the top of our list. And because of that, Google has gone ahead and said, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and not do that for anybody that's on an EDU license. So I would say, yeah, it's probably safe to do as a good practice. I would avoid it if you could. I mean, there's certain ways that we can avoid using full student data. Think first names only, or other ways to identify students individually.
Awesome. Thank you. So safety first, but they, like he was saying, we're under their little umbrella, so it's all good. So go ahead and log into your drive. You've got your files. I want to show you just what I did here. I said I'm presenting. On Wednesday, I'm going to Wheeling, and I'm doing an AI strand for them, and I'm going to have Kate Glass is going to be there observing me. And so I said, here's a non-classroom Danielson rubric. Can you assess my slide deck and give me suggestions for meeting the standards? So I clicked on Google Drive and I grabbed my slide deck from Google Drive. And then I took this Danielson rubric for non-classroom teacher, like if you're presenting, and I downloaded it from the internet, and then I attached it here as a file. And so I have these two files attached. I asked it to compare the two of those there, and it went ahead and it did that. It said, here are some suggestions. And it actually went through each one piece by piece and said, what about this? What about that? And so it gave me a good jumping off point for kind of pre-assessing before I get there to make sure that I'm hitting, what I should be hitting. Questions before we move forward? I have a couple more things here to show you. You can feel free to unmute, or I think, Tim, are you man in the chat there?
Yeah, real quick, a question came up. Chris, can you address this one? It says, so will Google not share any, and I know you're figuring this out as well, but will Google not share anything, or will it filter through student data and only see the student data? My understanding is it's not using our stuff altogether.
That's correct. So they're literally for anybody that's under the education license, they're just not using our stuff to improve the model at all, regardless of what the stuff is.
Awesome, thanks.
Cool. I'm going to show a couple other things real fast. I'm going to go back here to slides because I brought this up originally. When you are in slides in your Gmail, in Drive, any of the Google Workspace, you should be seeing this star right here on the side. I know on the first day, some of you were like, it's not there, it's not there. But then you realize once you log out, log back in, it pops up over here on the edge. And if you click on that, you'll see you get a Gemini window that pops right up. And so immediately what it did is it summarized the slide deck for me, gave me a little summary there that you can see. And then if I wanted to, I could have it add a summary slide. So that's kind of nice. If you're doing that for students and you wanted to kind of wrap up at the end, you could just have it make a quick summary slide. You can have it create slides from scratch, or you can just full on prompt it, and tell it what to do here. So that was where I got this slide from originally. I said, tell me the difference between a free Gemini and the paid version, because I'm going to be talking to staff. And then it created this slide for me. So if you have slides open, I would say go ahead and try it. Maybe just, hit summary and see what it does. So you can see that functionality. Very similar, if you are over in your email over here, you've got the same thing. Your Gemini is there. You want to click on that. And you can see, this was something that I had prompted it with yesterday. I was trying to find something and asking it, like where could it have gone? I said, look in spam, look in trash. I was looking for an original email that I had sent, and it was missing. So, but you can also, for example, open something that has like many replies on it. So this is my original thing that I sent you this morning, coming in 30 minutes. And I could go ahead and ask it to summarize this email chain, and it will do that for me. And so it will read this. And remember, Google has access to our emails in our Drive anyway. And again, like Chris said, they're not saving any of this data. They're not using it to improve their model. So it's totally fine to have it AI read that email and summarize for you. And so it shows me there's a couple questions in here from some people I got to go back and take a look at. So it's kind of nice, especially for me when I'm sending something to, all 7 buildings, and then all of a sudden I get 52 emails back. I can have it summarized real quick and just see like where are the questions, or if you were late to the game and your PLC had 40 messages that went back and forth to each other. That's a nice tool. Also, when you start an email, and if you type an email, inside of here now, you've got this little guy down here that says, help me write. You can see it also has that same Gemini star. And if you click on there, it gives you an option. Hold, please. It gives you an option to polish. Here, for example, let me hit a reply here. Or it'll even write a reply for you. So try that. Open up and type. I would have to type something more. Hello. How is your morning? Let's meet sometime soon. And we'll see what it says now. It's not wanting to do it for me right now, but try that on your own. Of course, it's always live when it doesn't want to do it. So that's under Gmail. And then lastly, over here, if you open up Drive, so go ahead to your grid. And if you want, you can find it there like we showed before. And then you should also see on the top. So let me close that so you can see fresh. We'll go like this. This is the same as in any of those other spots. You can get some summaries. You can have it look for different files. You can compare different files to each other. Really, really functional. You can prompt it to summarize all of the documents in one unit, for your topic, for your subject. You can click on that folder and have it summarize it and say, what am I missing? And maybe ask it, compared to these standards, is there something within these documents that I should be changing or adding or something like that? Tim, I know that you probably have some things to add. Do you want to add in? And then we'll take some questions.
Honestly, you've covered it incredibly well. A couple of questions that are coming up, and I don't know if the masses would be able to address them as we're learning in Gemini. Does it have voice to text or text to voice rather? And that's one that ChatGPT has, and then an app called Narrakeet has that came up. In terms of the workspace, you know, I haven't used it a whole lot. I have found myself living in the chat prompt window more so than anything because it's a lot like ChatGPT. You know, Katie, as you mentioned, it's in the workspace, and I'm sure there will be some benefits as it continues to get better. But typically, the slides it produces are pretty simplified. I think in Google Docs might be the most beneficial in terms of just having a real-time editor and idea generator. The search feature in Mail and so forth hasn't blown me away, but I will say in the Gemini chat, it has been very similar to ChatGPT in its ability to do things. I think the only limitation last week is I worked with a math teacher who's doing some really higher order processing, and there was some limitations in what Gemini would do in comparison to ChatGPT. But for about 95% of my workflow, Gemini has done an extraordinary job.
Awesome. Okay, let's blaze through these questions. You can feel free to unmute or just put it in the chat. It looks like we got the text to speech one answered. Questions?
And I will say some of the questions that come up, they're unique and ones that I wouldn't have thought to play with or look for, and I would encourage to continue to play and see if it does exist. We're kind of at its infancy in terms of really diving into Gemini, so there's going to be some questions we may not know, but if you want to email Katie or myself, we'd love to like dig in for you as well to see its capability and what it can do.
Yeah, we found out that you cannot delete a chat. It stays for 18 months. Chris talked on that a little bit at the beginning. I haven't used it too much on the iPad. If you are logged in under your managed Apple ID, Chris, I'm not sure. I don't think it's not in self-service because I know kids can't have it. We could probably put it there for staff. But it should work the same if you're in a browser. I can't imagine there'd be much difference there. And correct me if I'm wrong. Anyone else? Questions?
And I'll just add real quick, and Chris, I know this is an ongoing conversation we've been having, and I don't want to open it up in an awkward way in this format, but there's some points to, now that we introduced Gemini, a teacher was trying to use Gemini with students, and they don't have access yet to this space. The uniqueness is when you open up the workspace for students, they have it embedded in all of their stuff. And that does create some potential issues because if they're in Google Docs, now they have real-time ability to get things. So I think students are still using ChatGPT, and that may be the best workflow still in terms of kind of isolating their AI experience from where they're doing their work within in their Google Docs and so forth. Chris, I mean, again, I don't want to put you on the spot on that, but I feel like that's kind of one of the concerns potentially with opening up workspace for students.
Yeah, we had some pretty in-depth conversations last week about that. And Tim, your point of it being completely embedded in the students' kind of ecosystem of their work brought up the questions of cheating. Let's be honest. It's a good, quick, easy way for what some people would be perceived as cheating. So we're having some of those conversations and how best to approach that. Because we already have students using ChatGPT, maybe this isn't a big stretch, but we kind of want to walk through that a little bit gingerly, if you will, just to be sure that we're not completely opening up the floodgates and creating problems for educators.
Yeah, I see you, Becky. Becky saying, yes, can we please think about that really carefully from a desperate EFA division head? I mean, it's a yes and, right? Like, for sure. I kind of have a foot in both camps. I hear Chris because it's, we should. pause and take our time. But Tim, I hear you too. Like kids are using it and let's teach them the right way to use it. And in the meantime, our English staff are dying because, they're just, it'll work itself out and everything will be okay. Like it always is in education, right? We figure it out. But in this particular moment, it is a massive uphill battle for those teachers. What other questions do you guys have? Go ahead. Feel free to unmute.
I was just going to add to that, Katie, real quick, not to jump over, but just to say that. So right now, I would suggest, as a lot of people have been asking questions, best practice would be have students isolate any AI type of work in ChatGPT. It adds a layer of getting out of their normal Google Docs, and they use it there when it's appropriate, when teachers say it's okay. And we will start using Gemini because it's embedded in our workspace. So there'll be a bit of separation of what apps we're using and they're using, but I think that there's a safety net there that's appropriate.
I responded to this in the chat, I think, to Christie's response, but has anyone found a way that Gemini can pull information from either PDFs or other files? I've had ones where students will create like vocab on a slides or something that I turn into a PDF, and I upload the PDFs, and ChatGPT merges them all together really effectively into like a new slideshow, and can also extract the data so I can import it either into a document or into other files. And I found that I couldn't get Gemini to load as many files onto it. So just was wondering if anyone's had success with that.
I mean, I showed you just this one at the top, right, with these two, and clearly you're doing much more advanced than what I had it do here. So you're saying you were limited in the amount of things you could attach here, John?
Not attached, but it was always having trouble reading the files. The other thing I tried to do was, and I had gotten ChatGPT to, like, I uploaded, just more messing around, but I uploaded a AP like college board grading rubric into it.
Sure.
Turned it into a computer, like then it created a program from it. So then I could upload even handwritten text files of like student samples into like that were PDFs. It could read it and grade it. And when I tried it with Gemini, one, it really didn't write the computer program as well for it, but at the same time, it kept saying it needs a text version of it. It wouldn't like extract the data or read it. So I wasn't sure if that, yeah.
Have you tried it since this was turned on? Have you tried it at the premium?
Yes. Yeah. This was on Thursday or Friday.
And it wasn't doing it. Yeah. I don't have an answer for you there, Tim.
Okay.
I have noticed some instances where doing some things with uploaded PDFs, that if the PDF isn't if the text in it's not OCR'd, if it's not been processed as containing text, I've seen issues with that. For the most part, when I've had PDFs that I have either natively had character recognition in or run through a process to do that, they are better.
Okay.
I suspect that will improve with time because there's other models out there that are much more efficient at that already. So I suspect that will continue to get better.
Yeah, it kept sending me to websites or to other downloads to do that with the document so it could read it. So, I mean, it definitely knew what it was failing at accomplishing, but
yeah.
Yep. Okay.
If only we all knew what we were failing at accomplishing.
I just figure it's most things for me and then go from there.
You and me both, John. What other questions you guys got? Let's see.
I will say to add on to that, if you would have asked me 2 years ago, do I prefer Gemini or ChatGPT, I would have told you ChatGPT because it was far more advanced. For the last month, I've been using exclusively Gemini. And although, John, you bring up a situation where chat's still a little more advanced, as I mentioned, I work with a math teacher, and it was processing and creating graphs based on data better in chat than it was in Gemini. But in so many other ways, Gemini is catching up, that I'm not necessarily discouraged as we move in this way, because I have a feeling it's going to catch up pretty quickly. But we're still at a transition point where there might be some limitations. So there may be some times where I flip over. There's been a couple times where chat actually did not read a PDF for me early on. But I do think it'll advance pretty quickly as more and more people are using it.
Yep, makes sense.
We got a question about how come we didn't go with chat, and I just said price point. Of course, over here on this end with Chris and me, and Tim, and it was weeks of back and forth and round and yes and no and yeah.
Maybe in addition to just price point, I mean, think of the sustainability of a system like this, where being embedded in kind of the Google space that we're in so often anyway, has some added benefits. But some of you talk about the from a price standpoint, Google also had some more flexibility where to start to really expand the use of AI to all staff, is really where the affordability comes in, because ChatGPT basically was saying, if you want to get the lower price point, you have to buy licenses for all staff.
Mhm.
Whereas Google's literally saying, once you pass 500 staff on board, we're going to give you a reduced price for every other one after that. And you don't have to buy 2,000 licenses. You can buy 501 and still get that better price for all of them.
Chris, maybe you can answer this one. It says the data source range for Gemini, like in other words, how current is the data, and can Gemini replace Grammarly? And I know some of you have to go. Please don't feel like you need to stay if you have other things to do. We're going to just continue to answer questions for a little bit, and thank you for your time if you're hopping off. I did record, so I'll be sending that out later. But yeah, asking about I would think it's
I will say we tested it that last week, and we tested Gemini, all of Gemini's different versions, and we tested ChatGPT, and we asked it who won the most recent Super Bowl and who was the MVP. So we're talking within a month, and although they all answered it differently, they were able to find that information. So, whereas Chat used to say it was a year behind, everything's getting to be fairly current. Now, interestingly enough, Gemini wanted to point us to websites to tell us to look it up on NFL.com. But all of them seemed fairly current. Chris, feel free to add if you know any differences.
I don't necessarily. I literally asked Gemini how far back its data sets go, and it gives me, it's kind of a complex answer, and then there's all these bullets of things to consider. It doesn't give a specific date like some models will. And I think part of that's because Gemini is just constantly scouring the internet. It's not like there's a set date where it says, here's my knowledge base. It's continually adding to that.
Okay, well, we were going to wrap up by 8, and it is almost 8. Feel free to stay on if you want. I'll hang around for a couple more minutes, see if you had something specific you wanted to take a look at, or if you got lost somewhere along the way and you need a little hand holding. I am here for you. I've got you. But otherwise, have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you soon. Thanks. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. All of your help.
Sure. Hi, I have a question about the Grammarly, the second part of my question. Do you know if it can pretty much do what Grammarly subscription can do, or kind of your thoughts on
Yeah,
the
I've
different?
never used a Grammarly subscription, so I'm not versed on that, but I suppose we could ask it.
And Sasa, I'm working with a teacher right now who asked me the same question last week, and she uses Grammarly for everything. I have not played with it embedded in Google Docs enough to know. But that's what I would probably play with today. I would open up the Gemini feature when you're working in a Google Doc, because she showed me what it looks like in Grammarly, that it's always there, it's always prompting and so forth. I didn't play with it over the weekend. However, if you have that prompt up on the side, it's got a prompt and it's going to give you feedback. I would play with it and see, does it do most of the things you want Grammarly to do? Grammarly is a pretty unique product, and it's kind of the mainstay. We also looked up a bunch of different free options because she's thinking about, does she want to pay for it personally again? I would then play with it within the Google Doc and see if it will do most of what you want it to do. But it may turn out that it's actually Grammarly's unique enough that it's worth keeping.
Awesome. How's it going? Anyone else?
Great. I just wanted to say thank you to you guys to unlock Google AI Studio. It works in the background where we can call Gemini directly from an app in the background. So thank you.
Ooh, that's
Yeah, Bob,
amazing.
I'm curious about that because in my reading, Google AI Studio has a free tier, but then has paid levels beyond that. Do you see that being a roadblock for us?
Maybe as an example, like when we did the Firebase background for bot bracket, once we hit 10 gigabytes worth of data transfer, it does ask us to pay. I think it cost 52 cents for the robot competition this past weekend. So it really wasn't a huge deal.
Right.
So I think it's probably going to be a similar thing. If only a couple of us are using it, we'll probably never hit that. But if we really start adding in some cool stuff, we're going to have conversations as to whether or not we want to continue using it or use something else.
Okay, that's good information because sometimes when I touch base with our Google contacts, they're always asking me what sorts of stuff, if I could change, would I change? And
Right.
that's the sort of thing that I would love to bring up to them, specifically for education, because we're just frankly trying to learn how to use these tools and teach our students how to use them. So
Exactly.
I just 52 cents isn't a lot, but it's still 52 cents.
Right. Exactly.
And if Google can consume that 52 cents rather than us, I'm all for that. So I'm going to make a note next time I chat with them. I'll bring that up.
Sounds good. Yeah, but they made it really simple in the background. It's actually easier than ChatGPT with the way that the AI is communicating with the app. So
I don't know if anyone's played around with this a lot in classes. How is the hallucinations on Gemini compared to Chat GPT? Because I know they have the new 4.5 upgrade coming to it, which does look like it's changing some things, but I haven't played around with that aspect of
Are
Gemini
you
as much.
referring to image generation particularly, or just in anything that it's producing?
More on the text hallucinations of just, we're going to tell you incorrect information and, and claim it's real when it's not. That's more of a question, I think, for when the students start using it, but at the same time, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I don't have a great answer for that one.
In the couple times that I've tried to challenge exactly those sorts of things, because you're right, you could tell ChatGPT, no, this is what I believe to be correct, and it will just assume that you're right. There's been a couple times where I've done that within Gemini, and it's pushed back, I feel, a little bit more than ChatGPT did. But at the same time, I think you could still get it to say what you want when push comes to shove.
Nice. I'm just out of curiosity. That's the part I haven't done as much on. So I was like, oh, I'm curious on that one. So cool. And thank you all very much.
Thanks, John. Appreciate your questions. Anyone else?
I will share, in terms of that, the Google AI training, when they talked about this very issue of what it produces, the amount of information that is out there, the anomalies with wrong information is very, very small when that happens. It's pooling and finding a normalcy of a response, and it's usually using that. It's all based on statistics. So I think there are fewer anomalies and hallucinations taking place than there used to be.
So I'm just testing out the Google slide creation, and I just asked it a simple prompt like create a slide for learning styles um, for like audio, visual, and tactile learning. Give examples. And I keep getting these error messages from Gemini saying, sorry, I can't help with that. Like, why is that? Is it my prompt? Like, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I find that sometimes it's the prompt. I find that sometimes just like with anything, sometimes you just need to refresh and start again and it'll take it for me or do it in smaller chunks. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, I would just try it again. What was your prompt?
Create a slide for learning styles that mainly focus on audio, visual, and tactile. learning, maybe I'll just say learning. Include examples for each one that high school students could use. So I'm doing like a freshman guidance right now. And so
What was your vocab word on learning what?
learning styles. So, there's audio learning, visual and tactile learning. So I kind of
High school
tweak
students in what level? All levels?
it still said, I mean, I could change it to put freshman level.
Yeah.
It's still saying it can't do it. So that high school freshman, when I just said create a learning style slide, it was able to do that, but it couldn't do I was only teaching 3 of them instead of the,
Yeah, there we go. And then what I would do is, so it did it for me, and then you could iterate. You could have it create another one that just focuses on and give it the 3.
and so pretty much it looks like it's just giving you text. There's no images, nothing.
It'll do an image, like, it did this one for me. And
Okay.
here it had an image for me, but I swapped out the image with the chart that it gave me. But yeah, it'll do an image. You could ask it to when you're on that slide, have it insert an image. Create an image to go along with the slide. Try it.
Well, would you say like Canva would be a better, like slide presentation creation
I
in
mean,
terms of
better is
formatting?
subjective, right? Like
Yeah.
it depends on your goal. If you're just looking to get an outline and get something quick, and you already have information within your Google Workspace, it might be quicker to jump in here. See, it did an image for me here. It gave me 4 of them to pick from.
Got it. And I try to do multiple slide creation, but it looks like I have to do like slide by slide. Is that correct?
Correct. Slide by slide.
Okay.
All right. Well, we're gonna call it a day, and obviously feel free to reach out individually too if you want to work, on some of these things some more, Sasa. Thanks for your questions. I appreciate. All right, everyone. Well, have a good day. Happy Monday.
Have a
Woohoo.
good day.
See you soon.